Hi, students. Welcome to week 9 of your compressed developmental writing course. I'm going to go ahead and share the screen with you as we go forward this week. I have a couple of announcements to make. And just want to chat with you about the progress and the things that are happening, some of the consistent issues that I'm seeing and writing. I did want to make an announcement that I have extended the discussion board for the peer edit through next Monday. That way you have a little more time to develop your essay, but you still need to get your rough draft into me as soon as possible. If for some reason you weren't able to get it done, then please reach out to me so that we can discuss that on a one-to-one basis, but please only reach out to me during office hours. I have been grading and returning things, and so you should have some feedback from me, as well as responses based upon what you've been working on. One of the things that I have seen a lot of is the issues with embedding quotes. So you're going to have another practice this week with embedding quotes. But let's go ahead and go to week 9 and discuss what you have going on this week. So week 9, I do have the revising and editing PowerPoint, and then the drafting and revising academic writing PowerPoint, introduction and conclusion paragraphs, common grammar mistakes that we're going to be discussing. And your practice this week will be on embedding quotes. So just want to go ahead and get started. So I'll start with the introduction and conclusion PowerPoint. It's really difficult to tell someone how to write a conclusion and an introduction paragraph. But the way I try to do it with students is to explain that it is less painful for you if you follow this process. So your first paragraph should be something that introduces your topic and your thesis statement. So you'll have your attention getter and your hook and your lead in to what you're going to talk about without asking a question, without stating or announcing what you're going to be writing about, and then your thesis statement. That is probably the most critical, and that's one of the errors that I've seen quite often. It really does make me want to scream when I see someone writing with a question. This is collegiate level writing, and we don't start essays with questions. It's just a really, really bad idea to do so, because it seems like you're writing like a fourth grader, and we don't want that. We're trying to get you to move forward to where you're able to write cohesively and clearly in an ENC 1101 English composition course. So it is imperative that you don't use the personal pronouns, and you're not asking questions and starting your essay with a question. We're saying, today we are going to discuss. That's announcing. You don't want to do that either. So let me just give you a visual here. Your introduction paragraph, think of it as an upside down triangle, kind of like the rhetorical triangle that I showed you a couple of weeks ago. The top of it should be your attention getter. It can be a fact, it can be a statistic, it can be a story to an extent, but you don't want to use personal pronouns in it. Then you have your lead in, which typically bounces off your attention getter. Your thesis statement needs to go, so your paper will start from the general here and go to the specific, which is your thesis statement, telling what you're going to write about. So if you are a visual thinker, this will certainly help you. Your attention getter, your first sentence that gets the reader's attention and makes them want to read more. It is never a question. It's a very general introduction of the topic. Some options could be shocking statistics. It could be a startling story, like I said. It can be a quotation, but it needs to be a quotation that is common knowledge. One of my favorite quotes to use when writing academic essays is a quote from William Shakespeare in his play Julius Caesar. It starts off with, "Men are sometimes masters of our fates. The fault, dear Brutus, is in our stars." You may recognize the last half of that quote because that was a book by John Green, the title of a book by John Green, and also the title of a movie, The Fault in Our Stars. However, that the men are sometimes masters of their fates is the beginning part of that quote. And for me, that quote has stuck with me since I was 14 years old and read Julius Caesar for the first time. And I really believe that that's a great way to start. Now, I'm not telling you to start your paper with that, obviously, because you're writing about very different things. But for me, using that quote, I would say William Shakespeare once said, "Men are sometimes masters of their fates," in his famous play, Julius Caesar. And then I would go in and begin to talk about what I was writing about. That sets the scene. It could be a description, but again, I have in very large capital letters here, no questions. I've said this every single week of this class. We are in the 9th week of this class. It is imperative that you understand that you do not start an academic essay with a question. I cannot state this enough, and some people are still doing it. So just please remember, do not start your essay with a question. If you are having trouble taking the question and turning it into a statement, you can send me an email or send me a text. Reach out to me, and I will be more than happy to assist you in any way, shape, or form with how to turn it from a statement into a turn a question into a statement. That's what I do. Okay, your lead-in is the sentences between the attention getter and your thesis statement. It helps kind of bring that topic from general to specific, and it acts as a transition between your attention getter and your thesis statement. So in the next one, the thesis statement is the single most important sentence in your paper because it tells the reader what you're going to be writing about. It's generally what we call inverted, and it's the last sentence of the introductory paragraph. It tells exactly what the paper is going to be about without saying, this is what my paper is going to be about. That's why I have in capital letters without announcing it. Sometimes it presents the order of the supporting material that will be in the paper. You can say the reason why elderly people should have their driver's licenses revoked at the age of 65 is because, and then you have 1, 2, and 3. Again, it presents the order of the supporting material that will be in the paper. And because this is argumentative, you should have a defensible thesis statement that you are going to defend with your reasons. So that is extremely important. I know one of you in the class is planning on writing an essay, I believe, about the statehood versus of Puerto Rico. And you have to have 3 valid reasons as to why Puerto Rico should be a state, because you're arguing for it or against it. Can't remember whether you're arguing for or against it, but I believe you're arguing for it. I've read so much in the past couple of days, it's kind of difficult to remember. Your conclusion paragraph, again, there's no easy way to tell a student how to write a conclusion paragraph, but it is the last paragraph in your essay that, what I like to tell students, wraps everything up into a pretty little bow. It contains 3 main parts. It restates the thesis in different words. It also is a lead out. It also is that clincher. It sort of puts it all together, wraps it up, uses that pretty little bow on top of it. Again, it needs to be in different words than your actual thesis, but that comes with time and revision. So it's not going to be perfect the first time. Okay, so again, here's your visual. If you think of your conclusion as the right side up triangle, you have the restatement of your thesis in different words, you have your lead out, and you have your clincher. So from here, you go from specific to general in your conclusion. So when your introduction goes from general to specific, your conclusion goes from specific to general. I hope that makes a little bit of sense to you. You will then restate the thesis. You want to do it without repeating yourself. It is the most specific part of the conclusion, and it should include a transition to indicate that this is your conclusion paragraph. As a professor, as a teacher, I hate the words in conclusion. However, they're used most often. You can say ultimately, if you would like, that would work as well. Ultimately, Puerto Rico should become a state because, something along those lines. So it just has to have some sort of a transition. It can be ultimately. I'll put a handout with transition words under content so that you have that for this week as well. And then, of course, you have your lead out. It's just like your lead in, only it's backwards. It kind of, again, makes your topic go from specific to general again. It makes the topic larger to become more general and less specific. So what I tell students is sometimes it's a call to action. It's not a question, but it's a call to action. Further research needs to be done on this topic in order for it to be able to become a truly debatable topic. And it kind of smooths out the conclusion paragraph. Your clincher, again, that is your last sentence. It gives the paper finality. It's similar to an attention getter because it should make the reader think and leave an impression, and it is the most general part of the conclusion paragraph. I'm going to upload a sample short argumentative paper for you to look at and to see, and that will be uploaded to week 9 for you, just so you have an idea of what a solid argumentative paper looks like. So there's that, and then I'm going to transition from there into drafting and revising. Again, like I said, I've given you an additional week to upload your peer edit to the discussion board so that your peers will have time to read and respond. It is a requirement for this class that you do so, and if you don't, it will be detrimental to your grade. So please just make sure you get that addressed and taken care of. So when you are revising, our goals are kind of to help you develop a better system for drafting a paper in a limited time frame. We are down to the last few weeks of the course. It ends the first week of May. So we're in the first week of April. So we have about 4 weeks left. And in those 4 weeks, we're going to finish writing the argument paper, get that turned in, revised and polished, and then your final will be to write in a short time period. And you need to be able to do so without the assistance of a video. So this is to help you develop sustainable audience-centered revision techniques. Revising is difficult. I tell my students all the time, revising is probably the most painful part of the creation process of a paper, because revising means you're taking something that you have spent time writing and you're changing it based upon feedback from the instructor, feedback from your fellow students, your peers. But it also helps you develop a system, and it helps you become a better writer, because if it doesn't challenge you, you won't learn. So keep that in mind. And writing a first draft, no one at all ever writes a perfect first draft. Anne Lamott, who is one of my favorite writers, she writes in an essay entitled Crappy First Draft. She talks about how no one can write a polished first draft ever. Try to avoid anxiety. Don't wait till last minute. Set small goals. I'm going to write a paragraph today or a paragraph tomorrow. Write daily. Write when you feel inspired and when you don't. Sometimes it's difficult to write on a set schedule. I know we all have busy lives. Some of us have small children at home, some have jobs. So there's a lot of things going on. Sometimes it's difficult to find that motivation, but you have to force yourself to do so. Write what you can. If you can only get a couple of sentences done, then get a couple of sentences done and then come back to it with a fresh set of eyes. A lot of times for me, when I'm grading, sometimes my eyes bog out of my head and I have to walk away from the computer for a little while and come back after I've taken a short nap. Don't expect perfection. You guys are emerging writers. That does not mean you're going to have perfection. It means that it's going to take time, and that's okay. Even though you're in week 9, we've practiced verbs, we've practiced fragments, we've practiced run-on sentences, we've practiced citations, we've practiced composing and embedding quotes. Don't overthink it. You've practiced all the aspects of writing a paper. It's just a matter of putting it all together. So what I tell students, sometimes some people can just sit down in front of a computer and start typing. Those are the lucky ones. But then there are some people who have to outline everything they do. It's okay for you to write notes to yourself, and it's okay to write in a natural style. I have a lot of students that are English language learners. So I have told students before, sometimes if you feel that it's easier for you to write your essay in your native language and then do a translation from your native language into English, you can do that. However, the biggest thing that I can tell you is that personal pronouns are not okay in academic writing unless you're using it in a quote. So no I, no me, no we, no you. If you were in my in-person class, you would learn my tag phrase, which is, while I love each and every one of you, nobody cares what you think. You have to make sure that you are putting yourself in there without saying I, me, we, you. You need to become familiar with discipline conventions, expectations, and look at models. Like I said, I'll upload a couple of sample argumentative essays for you to see that earn good grades in this course, and maybe that will assist you in drafting your essay. And so you can see what a good, solid argumentative essay looks like. And I won't upload anything I don't have permission to upload. Get started with the big picture. You need to generate a working title. It can't just be argument essay. You have to have a title. It needs to be something catchy. Sometimes some of you have difficulty with that, and that's okay. If you're struggling with what to title your essay, reach out to me. I'll be more than happy to assist you. I am absolutely filled with all kinds of ideas, and I'm a great resource. You need to describe your exigency. Exigence is just a fancy word for saying why it matters. Why is it important? And I tell students, sometimes you can outline it. And in the ENC 1101 class, an outline is required. So practicing how to outline is good. You can free write, you can outline, you can do a cluster diagram, create topic sentences. We did all of that in the first couple of weeks of the course. Again, that will also help. You know, and that's just to sort of help you begin your first draft. So these are some sample template phrases to introduce others' ideas. Remember, you do have to have a peer-reviewed academic source, not something from a website, not something from cdc.gov. It needs to be something from a peer-reviewed resource on the library. So these are some sample template phrases that you can use. In their recent work, Y and Z have offered harsh critiques of Dr. X for, or X's argument that blank is supported by new research showing that blank. Notice that it's always in present tense. You have acknowledges, agrees, argues, believes, denies, claims, complains, concedes, demonstrates, insists. Again, all of those are in present tense. You can use some of these phrases, copy and paste them, use them. That's what they're there for. They're there to help you and assist you as you're drafting your paper. Again, here's some more. X overlooks what is considered an important point about blank. Certainly it is important to recognize that what X insists is a blank is in fact a blank. These conclusions, which X discusses in blank, add weight to the argument that. So again, some more sample template phrases to help introduce your ideas. Again, like I told you, make sure you know when to stop reading and start writing. If you have your sources already, then go ahead and read through your sources and find productive time. Some people are most productive early in the morning. Some people are most productive late at night. But you have to trick yourself into productivity. I know academic writing is not easy. This is not an easy course. It can be challenging, but you have to get the words on the page. You can't procrastinate. Your essay is going to go through one last revision, and then it's due. And then you have the last 2 weeks of the course. So you are at the home stretch of this course. So it's very, very important that you are utilizing your time wisely. And I know that life happens. I know things happen. I understand that. However, it is important that you don't get behind. So at this point, you should have something of a rough draft ready to go and upload to the discussion board and to the Dropbox. Very, very important. And then after that, then you will write additional drafts. So you're going to work from higher level concerns to lower level concerns. Now, I'm pretty good about giving specific feedback. I'll tell you where to put commas. I'll tell you that the sentence doesn't make sense. I will tell you how you can possibly fix it. But the best advice that I can give you is to read your paper out loud. Read it out loud to yourself, because you can catch mistakes more often if you read it out loud to yourself. And then find your thesis, evaluate it, look at it. Does my thesis make sense? Is it arguable? Does it help me? And then you can even write an abstract, which is just a fancy word for saying summary, and then compare it with your text. Again, meta discourse is another thing. So it kind of provides cues to your readers. You want to look to see if you've got that. Use appropriate signposts to help the reader follow your argument. So if you're doing like a cause and effect argument, in order to understand A, one must first acknowledge B. Again, you can use those sample templates for those. And make sure you have a clear thesis statement. You don't have to have section headings. That is absolutely, in fact, I'm going to get rid of that right now, because you don't have to have section headings. Clear thesis statement and topic, sentences, or paragraphs. For your if you were doing subheadings and things, that's really more for a much higher level English course. Revising. So what I tell students, revising is not the same thing as editing. Editing is looking specifically for grammar issues and spelling issues, and sentence construction issues. So revising is enhancing or changing the wording on something. Say, for example, you have submitted an essay that has a lot of personal pronouns in it. You have to go back and look at that and revise those sentences to get rid of those personal pronouns. That's why I say revising is the most painful, because you have to take what you have written and change it to either enhance it or make it better, or fix it to where it's a little more understanding. You also want to make sure cohesion is there. We talked about cohesion a couple weeks ago. You want to make sure that your ideas are connecting and that there's not a disconnect within the paper, and that they're coherent, meaning that all your ideas clearly support your main point. It's very, very important. Coherence, you want to eliminate unrelated information. I have read papers, and I like to call them squirrel moments. And if you ever have me in person, you will hear me discuss squirrel moments. Squirrel moments are when you're reading a paper and everything's going great. And then all of a sudden it flies out of left field, and there's something that's completely unrelated to what the paper was talking about. And I call those squirrel moments, because it's like a squirrel runs across the top of the page. Sometimes you have to rewrite your topic sentences. You have to separate your ideas, develop them in separate paragraphs. And you have to make sure you're balancing your claim, your evidence, and your counterclaims. You don't want to have too much of one and not enough of the other. So make sure you have a good balance. Revision, like I said, is the most painful part. Revising sentences, you just want to make sure that you have a hierarchy of ideas. Your voice is active, meaning it's in present tense, and you're illustrating effective word choice with all parts of speech. So that includes prepositions, adjectives, adverbs, nouns, pronouns. We don't want personal pronouns, but and again, no personal pronouns. Notice that's in capital letters. That's very, very important. Revising, again, the most important ideas are found in the independent clause. So here's an example. Although it is evident availability has declined, so that's your introductory clause, production costs are still high. This is the independent clause because it stands alone. This is a very important part of the sentence. This is the main point. So you have this introductory phrase. It's also known as an appositive phrase because it introduces and it makes sense. And then you have place the most important words and phrases at the beginning or end of the clauses. So for an example, the American Cancer Association and efforts to cure cancer has raised significant funds in the last few months. Now, this is actually in a positive phrase. I was mistaken about the first one. The American Cancer Association, if you eliminate this phrase, in efforts to cure cancer, the sentence still makes sense. So it says the American Cancer Association has raised significant funds in the last few months. So the most important words and phrases are at the beginning and the end. So the American Cancer Association is your subject, and your verb, the last part of the sentence here, has raised significant funds in the last few months. You can say has been raising or anything like that. But you also have in efforts to cure cancer, which is an important part as well. It's just not necessarily an important part of the sentence. You don't have to have it in there. I hope that makes sense. Revising, again, you want to use active language unless passive voice is necessary for cohesion. You also want to make sure that this is a way to avoid passive voice. The tree was hit. Well, that, yeah. That's passive. You want to make sure it all stays in the same present tense. So again, the tree was hit by the car. Again, passive voice. So you want to make sure that you have present tense in everything. Everything you're writing is in present tense unless the issue you're talking about argumentatively has occurred in the past. And even then, you're still going to want to keep it in present tense and explain what's going on now with that issue. Revising sentences, again, improve your word choice. You don't want to use empty words. Use the words that I've given you as a cheat sheet. Avoid repetition. Go back in the last several weeks. You can see all the handouts and things that I've posted to help you. You want to use synonyms to your advantage, but you also want to be careful about using synonyms. I know a lot of students like to use a thesaurus when they're writing, especially in compressed developmental writing. It's important that you know what the word means before you put it on your paper. And sometimes you need to avoid nominalizations because they can transform verbs into nouns. So the author's analysis of data omits any citation of sources that would provide support for criticism of this argument. Again, when you nominalize something like this, it takes the verb and turns it into a noun. An argument, a noun. Criticism, noun. Support, noun. Citation, noun. Analysis, noun. You don't want to do that. So just be really careful with that. And then revising collaboratively, you can give it to somebody, ask them to read it. Work with a partner. Find somebody from your class. Hey, can I send you my paper? Will you look at it? That's fine. You can even send it to me. I'll be happy to give you comments and feedback. I may not give them to you right away, but you will get them. But you need to ask specific questions to your readers. That's what the discussion board is for. It's very important that you engage with your fellow classmates. This is a small class. So if you want to respond to more than one person, that's absolutely okay. But if you have a family member or somebody you know that's strong in writing, again, you can give it to them. Have them read through it. Sometimes they'll find mistakes. Other times they'll give you bad advice. It really depends on what you're doing. We also offer through the Tutoring and Learning Center here at the school, you can send them your paper. You can make a Zoom appointment with them. You can show them what you've got, and then they will help you walk through the process as well. So that's also really, really important to utilize those resources. Because they're part of your tuition and they're very, very helpful. So revision, like I said, is painful, but it is an important part of it. Now, those of you procrastinators who haven't really even started on your essay, I would advise you to go ahead and get started because it's imperative that you get it finished. And is a really important part of this course. The revising and editing is something that I see a lot of students don't do, and it's really important that you do revise and edit. So one of the things that I like to talk about as we're nearing towards the end of the course are common grammar mistakes that I see with the students writing. So I created this PowerPoint just so you could kind of see. Grammar is important because of clarity of meaning. Now, again, if English is not your first language, grammar can be complicated because the English language is complicated. And I know, especially for my students that speak Spanish as a first language, the prepositions are in a different spot in the sentences, and the grammar is completely different in Spanish versus English. So I know English has a whole bunch of rules, but that's okay. That's what I'm here for. I'm a great resource to assist you and help you in any way, as well as being able to proofread and look at your papers before you turn them in. So grammar helps enhance the clarity of meaning. It also enhances the readability and credibility of your writing. So common types of errors that I see: wrong words, punctuation, and usage errors. So just going off of wrong words, there's spelling and typos. Some of them are very, very simple. I know for me, as I have been working in the past couple weeks, I went and got my nails done. They're a little too long. So I've had a lot of typos in my writing over the past couple of weeks because I've been trying to adjust to having my nails back. And using a keyboard with nails is a little more difficult. So you can't just rely on spell check. Make sure you're using the right word. If you have a word and you're unsure of the meaning, use the dictionary. You have a built-in one through Microsoft Word. You can use that. Or if you're like me, you prefer the old school, give me a paper dictionary, use that. And as I said, with a thesaurus, you need to be really, really careful because sometimes you're using words and you don't even know what they really actually mean. And you want to watch out for words with the wrong shade of meaning or the wrong meaning altogether. Commonly confused words, there, and there is one of them. Spell check won't catch those. So it's very, very important that you check to see that you're using the proper commonly confused words. Now, we did some work with commonly confused words, I think in week 2. So if you need to go back and look for those, then do that. But commonly confused words, there, and there is the most common one that I see. But there's so many others, it's impossible to go through the entire list. I've listed the most common ones that I see. There, and there, and your, and whose. Again, you won't use your because it's a personal pronoun. And whose typically is used in conjunction with questions, WHO apostrophe S. So you won't use that one typically because it is a question. However, just to make 100% certain, just be aware of what the commonly confused words are. To, and to. Again, one's a preposition, one's an adverb, one's a number. So, and a lot. So that's something that's commonly confused with students. A lot, A-L-O-T, is 2 words. If you're saying the workers are worrying a lot about their jobs, it means to a great degree or an extent. That is definitely 2 words. A-L-O-T, that's not a word at all. And then a lot, A-L-L-O-T, is actually a verb. It means to assign or distribute. So we were allotted 20 tickets. For graduation, we are allotted 6 tickets, things like that. We're given 6 tickets. So to be allotted something. Punctuation errors, the most common are commas. A lot of people don't like to use commas. I have found in teaching this course numerous times, you either love commas too much or you despise them and don't use them enough. So fanboys is the most popular way to remember conjunctions, and usually use a comma and a coordinating conjunction to join 2 independent clauses. So you have and, but, for, or, nor, so, and yet. So a great way to remember that is fanboys. The game was over, comma, but the crowd refused to leave. So it joins the 2 sentences. Yesterday was her birthday, comma, so they went out to dinner. Again, it joins 2 sentences into one by using a comma, but it makes sense. You also want to use them after introductory clauses or phrases or words that come before your main clause. So again, these have personal pronouns for examples, and you won't use personal pronouns in academic writing, but while I was eating, comma, the cat scratched at the door. Of course it did, because they wanted cat food. And then, well, perhaps he meant no harm. Again, introductory. It's introducing something. So that's also extremely important with commas. And what is commonly known as the Oxford comma, it separates three or more words, phrases, or clauses that are written in a series. So the Constitution establishes the legislative, executive, and judicial branches of government. First comma after legislative, second comma after executive, and then comma and. Comma, comma, and. Comma, comma, and. That's what I tell my students all the time. All classes, comma, comma, and. Comma, comma, and. That's known as the Oxford comma. It's very important. Use commas to set apart a parenthetical phrase in a sentence, also known as an appositive phrase. My friend Jessica, comma, who lives in Connecticut, comma, is a yoga teacher. Now, the reason why it's an appositive phrase here, if you see that I've highlighted that, you could actually take that out and the sentence still makes sense. My friend Jessica is a yoga teacher. So again, this is just extraneous information and the sentence would still make sense, and then you wouldn't have to use the commas. Keep it simple. Semicolons, again, just a review on the semicolons, you use those to join two independent clauses that are not joined by a conjunction. So if it doesn't have for and yet so, but for and fanboys yet so. You would use a semicolon to join the two sentences. The participants in the first study were paid. Complete sentence. Those in the second were unpaid. Again, another complete sentence. It joins two independent sentences. It can stand alone. And also you can use a semicolon to separate elements in a series that already contain commas. So like if you're using cities, Lynchburg, Virginia, Washington, D.C., and Raleigh, North Carolina, that's when you would use a semicolon to separate them. You're already using the comma to separate the city and state, then you would use a semicolon to indicate separation there. Again, you can do it again to join two independent clauses. So I tell students when it comes to semicolons, there's a great way to remember it. Semicolons are used for a lot of different things to join, specifically to join two independent clauses. But it also is a great analogy to remember when it comes to semicolons is the Semicolon Project. It's a mental health initiative that was launched several years ago. And a lot of people, if you see them, that they have a semicolon tattoo on their finger or on their hand, it means typically that they could have chose to end their life, but instead they didn't. They chose to continue on. And that's how it helps my students remember semicolons. The semicolon continues that sentence. It chooses not to end that sentence and continues, makes the choice to continue on. I really have no interest in politics, complete sentence, joined by a semicolon. However, comma, I do like to stay informed by watching the debates. Again, you've got a semicolon, a comma, and another complete sentence. Very, very important. And it's got the transition word, however, in there. Apostrophes, try to avoid contractions in academic writing. Sometimes it's unavoidable, especially when you're using quotes, but it is something that is important. You use it to form a possessive noun. For example, my last name is Wood. A lot of people call me Woods. If they're referring to something that I own, Rachel Wood's new car, something along those lines. So do not use an apostrophe to form a plural. Quotation marks, if your sentence ends with a footnote, you would put your superscript number after your final mark of punctuation. That goes with Chicago manual style, so you really won't use the Chicago manual style unless you're writing a history paper, which you are not. So you just want to make sure that if your sentence ends with a parenthetical citation, so you have quoted and embedded that quote in your sentence, and you have that parenthetical citation, you want to make sure the punctuation goes after the parenthetical citation. So for example, in this one here, according to car and driver, comma, the Denali is, again, you're providing context, and then you have the quote, among the most agile of full-size sport utility vehicles. You have the end of quotation, you have your author and your page number, and then you have your period at the end of the parenthetical citation. That is proper MLA formatting. Usage errors, fragments. Make sure you don't have fragments. A complete sentence has to have 3 components. It has to have a subject, it has a predicate, it has to have a complete thought. A fragment is an incomplete sentences. That is something that I have seen in some of your writing over the past couple weeks. So please just be careful and make sure. Sometimes it helps to read it out loud. And again, the advice that I've given for my English language learners, it's very important. Sometimes if you need to, and this is what I've told students for years, if you need to write your essay in your native language and then translate it into English, that can be fixed. That's not a problem. That's easily done. However, sometimes people are more comfortable doing that, and that's okay. A fragment is an incomplete thought. It cannot stand alone. Reading your paper out loud is the best way to catch sentence fragments. Sometimes they lack a subject. Sometimes they lack a verb. Sometimes they lack both. Dependent clauses are also fragments if they cannot stand alone. So that's really important. Here's an example. Went out of business after Starbucks coffee opened. I don't know what went out of business, and I know why it went out of business. I know the results of what happened, but I don't know what company you're talking about. One of my friends who won a contest by playing a variety of instruments. Again, that gives me context, but it doesn't tell me what contest. It doesn't tell me which friend it was. It doesn't give me enough information. Or since I went fishing. Okay. You went fishing. I went fishing is a complete sentence, but having that since on there makes it an introductory phrase, and therefore it needs more information. So run-on sentences are the bane of my existence. So that's 2 or more independent clauses not properly separated. Sometimes students, when they get excited and they start writing, they end up with run-on sentences. Run-on sentences are easily fixed. You can separate them into smaller sentences, but they lack punctuation, they lack conjunctions, they have incorrect punctuation, and sometimes they have a comma splice. And just a little side note here, on my very first essay I ever wrote for ENC 1101, when I was in undergraduate school, we were still handwriting essays. I'm old. So I revised my essay. And it was a beautiful essay, I thought. I mean, I thought it was great. My professor had read it. He thought it was great, gave me suggestions for revision. I went back and I revised it. And in my revisions, I ended up putting a comma in the middle of a sentence that was 2 independent clauses, and it caused a comma splice. It dropped me an entire letter grade. I went from an A to a B for 1 comma error. Now, the rules are a little bit more relaxed now, but I will never forget that as long as I live. And so I try to tell students to avoid using a comma splice. Just make sure you know your comma rules. It's not just a long sentence. Sometimes it's a sentence that doesn't have the proper conjunction in it or the proper punctuation in it, but it does have a comma because, well, I just think a comma should go in there. So you have to be really careful with run-on sentences. So long sentences can be grammatically correct. So they will drive your professor crazy, but sometimes they can be grammatically correct. So looking at this one, this is an 86-word sentence. It's a really long sentence. During the 1960s, development thinking, encompassing both ideology and strategy, prioritized economic growth and the application of modern scientific and technical knowledge as the route to prosperity in the underdeveloped world, and defined the global development problem as one in which less developed nations needed to catch up with the West and enter the modern age of capitalism and liberal democracy. In short, to engage in a form of modernization that was equated with Westernization and an associated faith in the rationality of science and technology. 86 words. The sentence is properly punctuated. The sentence is properly written. It doesn't have comma splices, but it is grammatically correct. It is 86 words. It makes me crazy to see long sentences like that, because it certainly can be broken down. However, it's grammatically correct, so I can't mark off for it. So keep that in mind. Here's an example. My favorite Mediterranean spread is hummus. It is very garlicky. So as you can see, it is a run-on sentence because it doesn't have punctuation. My favorite Mediterranean spread is hummus. It is very garlicky. Okay, it is nearly 5:30. We cannot reach town before dark. That is a comma splice. This would need a semicolon instead of a comma. So that's what makes it a run-on sentence. Dangling participles, again, a dangling participle is a word or phrase that modifies a word, not clearly stated or unintended noun in the sentence. So those aren't as common. You just need to make sure you're providing the missing information. After rotting in the cellar, my brother brought up some oranges. So the reason why it's dangling is it sounds like your brother was rotting in the cellar, rather than the oranges. So it would just have to be reworded to make it make more sense. Having finished the assignment, the TV was turned on. Now, again, that's another really wonky, weird sentence because it sounds like the TV finished the assignment. Or not. I don't know. You know, we could say my brother turned the TV on. And that would fix the dangling participle. Again, dangling participles are some sophisticated grammar techniques that you probably weren't taught in school, or if you were, then it's been a really long time for some of you. But you can see how they don't make sense. Featuring plug-in circuit boards, we can strongly endorse the server's flexibility and growth potential. Okay, are we the ones with plug-in circuit boards? It doesn't make sense. So you just have to be careful with your dangling participles. Okay, your verb tense, like I told you, everything needs to be in present tenses and they have to be consistent through your writing. Otherwise, you have a tense shift and it doesn't make sense. So you need to be familiar with your verb forms and tenses. And this all goes with revising and editing as well. So if you look and see the tense shift here, that's parallel structure and parallelism. About noon, the sky darkened. A breeze sprang up and a low rumble announces the approaching storm. If you see here, you have past tense, you have present tense, and then you have, again, present tense. So your tenses shift here in this sentence. I climbed out of the car, walked through the door, and prepared to meet the parents. Okay, climbed, walked, and prepared. But then the dog runs to meet me. So that's where the tense shift happens. You just have to be really careful. Again, subject verb agreements. You need to make sure they're not having a disagreement, that they are getting along. The box of ornaments belong in the attic. Okay. What we need are more pots and pans. Doesn't agree. High levels of mercury occurs in some fish. Now, that could be fixed with just the elimination of the S in occurs. Very easy to fix sometimes, such verb agreement. So again, editing yourself, you need to make sure you know the rules. Go back and watch the videos, look at the PowerPoints if you need to. Plan ahead. You want to leave yourself enough time to edit. Know your writing weaknesses. For some of you, you know where your weaknesses are. You've heard feedback from me. You know, the biggest thing that I've seen in the past couple of weeks is the errors with embedding quotes. And I'm going to go over that here in just a moment. So you can read out loud, read it in reverse, and don't be afraid to delete. There's an undo button. You can undo anything. I don't know how many times you can undo it, but you can most certainly undo it. So here's my references, and these are my examples, and then here's some available resources. Strunk and White's classic, The Elements of Style, that's available on PDF. That does help you. It is a reference. The OWL Purdue is a very helpful reference. Make sure you're using credible sources, different people, myself, the Learning Center, Dr. Cavito at the college is in charge of the Learning Center. There's a full-time tutor in there that works with English students as well that are struggling. You can make an appointment with the Learning Center and they'll be more than happy to assist you over Zoom, looking at your paper. You can email it to them, they'll look at it and they'll give you some feedback. So you have that option as well, but please just make sure you're completing the assignments as necessary and as required. I'm going to go ahead and share the screen one more time with you. So that you can see your assignments for this week and know what you're supposed to be doing. So there and so there. We've already gone over that. Okay, so this is week 9, but I'm going to show you here. This is the assignment that I'm going to have you do this week. So again, you're going to do some practice embedding quotes with MLA in text citations. So I've given you the quotes from the sources. So Anne Lamott, the essay Crappy First Drafts, I gave you a quote. I gave you the page number. I also gave you a signal phrase and context. What you need to do, you need to embed the quotes, add context, and include an in-text citation. So I'm not sure if you misunderstood what I was asking you to do last week when I gave you the embedded quotes. I gave you quotes and I wanted you to write some context with them. Even if it was just, for example, blah, blah, blah states. You need to have some context and you need to use proper MLA citations, which is the parenthetical citation with the page number. And remember, the period goes after the citation. So here's your quote. You can copy and paste that, but you need to add context. You need to say, something along the lines of author Anne Lamott argues, notice that's in present tense, and then Lamott states, something along those lines. So you have 3 different exercises to do. You have Anne Lamott's Crappy First Draft, you have Stephen King's essay, Why We Crave Horror Movies, and then you have Simon Gottschalk essay In Praise of Doing Nothing, Why Leisure Time is Good for Productivity, and gives you some context behind it. And you need to come up with some signal phrases and put it in there, correctly embed the quote to practice and make sure that you are doing that. So that's going to be your grammar practice this week. I haven't yet uploaded it. And then of course you have your discussion board, which is going to be on uploading your rough draft and then commenting to one of your peers or 2 of your peers, because if somebody doesn't have comments on there, it can be really upsetting. Read through their essay, offer them constructive criticism. Like I said, I extend it for a week, but you do need to make sure to get your rough draft into the Dropbox so that I can have a look at it and give you feedback on that as well. As always, if you have any questions, reach out to me. I'll be more than happy to assist you in any way, shape, or form. I'm available by email. You have my phone number for text. If you do text me, you need to identify yourself. That's pretty important, simply because I don't know who you are. I teach 3 classes. And so when I get a text message from a student who says, hey, I'm missing an assignment, that gives me no information. I need to have some context, just like if you were using quotes. I need to know who you are, what class you're in, so that I can assist you during the office hours. I'm also on campus on Tuesdays and Wednesdays from 4:30 until 5:30 when my classes start. So you're more than welcome to stop by room B208, and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you have on campus, but you also have my phone number as well and email. Anyway, I hope you guys have a great week. Sorry the video was a little bit long. But I really wanted to get across the importance of what we have to do in week 9 as we're coming into the home stretch of the course and getting ready to finish up in the last couple of weeks. Hope you guys have a wonderful and fantastic and amazing week, and I will see you next week for the video.